Welcome. This presentation will give you an overview of the 2022-23 CSS Profile. We will briefly cover applying for financial aid before talking about the what, why, when, and how of the CSS Profile. We will then discuss what happens if you made a mistake and discuss some common mistakes to help you avoid repeating those. We will end by providing you with some resources, including our new resources in Spanish. To apply for financial aid, you must also apply for admissions. You can submit the admission and financial aid application at the same time. The key is to make certain you are submitting the right documents and meeting the application requirements for each college you apply to. To apply for federal student aid, you must complete the free application for federal student aid, more commonly known as the FAFSA. If the institution requires the CSS Profile, you should complete that application as well. And if your college requires any other documents or applications, you should complete and submit them by the college's deadline. Understanding and honoring the application requirements and deadlines is an important part of being a successful applicant. And then finally, for both the 2022-23 FAFSA and CSS Profile, they will be available on October 1st. This happens each year, and each October's application applies only to the upcoming academic year. So the October 1st, 2021 FAFSA and CSS Profile can only be used to apply for aid for the 2022-23 academic year. CSS Profile is an online application used by colleges and scholarship programs to award institutional aid. You should think about this application as a supplemental application to the FAFSA. For students eligible to apply for federal student aid, such as the Pell Grants and federal loans, you must apply for federal student aid using the FAFSA. But federal aid is often not enough to pay for college, so institutional aid can be very important. And the way to get access to that aid at some colleges is to file CSS Profile. For international students, the CSS Profile may be the primary tool. The CSS Profile serves students all over the globe and allows families to report their financial information in their home currency. Unlike the FAFSA, a Social Security number is not required in order to submit CSS Profile. This makes it possible for students who are not U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, to use the CSS Profile to apply for institutional aid. Why would a college require CSS Profile? Simply because the FAFSA does not ask enough questions. The FAFSA is trying to understand who needs the Pell Grant. CSS Profile is trying to help the institutions understand who needs the college's money. To put this in perspective, the FAFSA is used to determine who gets a Pell Grant up to $6,000. Colleges that use the CSS Profile can easily award amounts of more than $60,000. When looking to award that amount of money to a single student, you want to make certain you understand the full financial picture of that student and their family. This requires a deeper dive into their finances, which CSS Profile allows the colleges to do. Colleges want to have a much broader look at families so they can understand who really needs institutional aid and to award that aid in a fair and consistent manner. And if the student's parents are no longer together, that might mean collecting CSS profiles from each of the student's parents. And why should you complete CSS Profile? If you're going to one of the colleges that uses CSS Profile, you should make certain that you do what is needed to open that door to the institution's financial aid. Simple as that. When should the CSS profile be submitted? Well, your college's deadlines should drive that decision. If you have multiple colleges with multiple deadlines, your deadline is the earliest deadline. Every college will have its own deadline. If you pick the earliest one to meet, you'll have the rest covered. And please, don't try to submit your application at 11:59 p.m. on the very last day. Always give yourself plenty of time to collect the information your school needs or to deal with unexpected issues. You don't want to miss a deadline because you waited until the last minute. A good rule of thumb is that your deadline is the actual deadline minus 5 days. If you work to hit that deadline, you can save yourself a lot of stress. We've discussed the what, why, and when, so now let's talk about the how. First, make certain your college requires CSS Profile. To do that, the best place to go is the college's website, which has definitive information on application requirements and deadline dates. There is also a list of institutions that use CSS Profile on the College Board's website. If your college requires CSS Profile, the application can be found at cssprofile.org. As with the FAFSA, CSS Profile will require financial information from you, the student, and in most cases, your parents. If you created a College Board account for the SAT, PSAT, or AP, use the same username and password to sign in. If not, create a new account. Now, a very important thing to remember is that once you log in, you should complete the CSS profile for 2022-23, not 2021-22. If you will graduate from high school the spring of 2022, you will be applying for financial aid for the 2022-23 academic year. This is the same way it will work for the FAFSA. Selecting the wrong year is a common mistake students and their parents make. When that happens, the information can't simply be transferred. The family would need to do the application all over again. Juniors cannot use CSS Profile to apply early for financial aid. Students can only apply during the academic year before they plan to enroll in college. Some schools may also require divorced or separated parents to complete separate applications. We have instructions for doing that on our website. Custodial parents can create their own account if they prefer to keep their information private from the student. However, it's important to understand that if the student received an SAT fee waiver, CSS Profile will only honor that fee waiver for the CSS Profile submitted with the student's College Board account. For 2022-23, CSS Profile is free for any domestic undergraduate student whose family reported income is $100,000 or less. This includes all independent or dependent students, first-time, returning, and transfer students. If you qualify, you can submit CSS Profile to unlimited colleges at no cost. For students who received an SAT fee waiver, are an orphan, ward of the court, or homeless, you will still be able to submit the CSS Profile for free as well. For 22-23, we are adding new notifications within the application to notify you as early as possible for your eligibility to submit the CSS Profile for free. If you qualify based on receiving an SAT fee waiver, or if you are an orphan or ward of the court, you will be notified after the academic information section. For those that qualify solely based on income, you will still be notified at the final charge summary screen, as seen here. Additionally, as soon as your eligibility is determined, we will update your CSS Profile dashboard with that information as seen here. For those that do not qualify for a fee waiver, the student in the custodial household's CSS profile is $25 for the application in the first college selected, then $16 for each additional college selected. The non-custodial household's CSS profile is $25, regardless of the number of colleges the student selects. Now, let's talk about completing CSS Profile. I'm not going to go through the entire application, but I am going to point out a few key areas to help get you off to the right start. Let's begin by giving you a quick look at the sections of CSS Profile. When you look at it like this, the sections in purple are always collected, while the blue sections are collected when parental data is required, as is always the case for dependent students and may be the case for independent students. Even within these sections, the questions you see may depend on answers you have given in earlier sections, or even in the section you are in at the time. CSS Profile will adjust to you according to your situation. The CSS Profile pages are designed to help guide you through the application process with a variety of helpful features. You can see the year in the light gray banner at the top to confirm you are completing the application for the correct year. The navigation down the left side of the page allows you to move forward and backward in your application. This section will grow as you answer questions, and we know what questions you need to answer. Help can be found on the right side in the yellow box. Once you put your cursor into the response box, any help text available for that question will pop to the right. This help text is designed to help you answer the questions correctly, so be sure to read it. The Save and Continue button at the bottom of the page will save the information you entered and move you to the next page. If you save and continue, then realize you need to return to a page, use the navigation to go back. Don't use your back button on your browser. You could be thrown out of your application. And finally, in the purple banner at the top, you can get help by clicking on Contact Us, go to the student's dashboard, or log out of the application. When you log out, everything you've entered and saved will be there for you when you return. When you log back in, you'll be returned to the next page you need to complete. The application starts by obtaining the student's identifying information. We are going to complete an application as Elizabeth Ford. Elizabeth will enter all her information on the Getting Started page, including her legal name, date of birth, and social security number. We see a variety of mistakes on this page, so let's review those to prevent you from making the same mistake. The biggest mistake we see is parents entering their information on this page. The Getting Started page asks for student information only. Parent information will not be entered on this page. Second is entering a nickname in the first name field. Here, you need to enter the student's legal first name. If you have a nickname or a preferred name, you can enter that in the preferred name field. For example, our student Elizabeth prefers to be called Liz. She will enter Elizabeth in the first name field and Liz in the preferred name field. And lastly, entering your social security number incorrectly or not at all. For students with a social security number, it's very important to enter the correct number. Colleges will use your social to match to your FAFSA application as well as to your admissions file. If you enter this number incorrectly, or not at all, it could delay your application. The next page is the student status page. Here again, we are asking questions about the student. These questions often cause problems within the application and are one of the most common mistakes that applicants make. Not because these are hard to answer, but because parents often answer these questions about themselves instead of about the student. The first question asks if Elizabeth has legal dependents. Elizabeth's name is used in these questions to emphasize these questions are about her. These questions are important for determining which questions you are asked throughout the application. If you answer these incorrectly, the questions your college needs will not be displayed, which will cause significant delays in the application process. Be sure to take your time and thoroughly read each question to verify if it is about the student or about the parent.
Most of you are going to answer no to these questions. But let's look at this last question that asks about homelessness.
If you said yes to that question, you'll be presented with these additional questions. These questions dig deeper to understand if the student has been officially certified as an unaccompanied youth who is homeless or at risk of being homeless. These are the same questions that you are asked on the FAFSA, and these should be answered in the same way. Keep in mind that most colleges will require documentation to confirm the student's homeless status if reported on the FAFSA, CSS Profile, or both.
Everyone who completes a CSS profile will be asked to report their parents, and by this, we mean all of your parents, biological or adoptive parents, as well as the spouses and partners of your parents. If your parent is deceased, you should report the parent and indicate that they are deceased. This step is important to understand your family as it exists when you apply for aid. We have a tutorial to guide you through reporting your parents. To access that tutorial, you can click on Reporting Parents on the CSS profile on the left.
Elizabeth's parents are married, so she lists her father Mark in Parent 1 field and her mother Ava in the Parent 2 field. The Add Another Parent button allows you to report other parents, such as step-parents or legal guardians. Notice that the residence question asks the country where your parents live. It does not ask where your parents were born or where they are a citizen. This question is important because CSS Profile is a global application. Students all over the world complete CSS Profile, and when they do, they can report it in their country's home currency. If your parents came from another country, but they live here now, you should report that your parents live in the US.
You can search for your colleges by their code number, their name, or their state. The best way to search is to use the CSS code number for your college. Check your college's website to see if they provided the code you should use. If so, use that one. If not, search by name or state to find each of your colleges.
If you search using a college name, you might get multiple results. Some colleges have both undergraduate and graduate programs, and when they do, it's important to select the right program. Duke University is a great example. They have 3 schools that use CSS Profile: Duke University Grad School, Duke University, and Duke University School of Nursing. Notice that each of these Duke universities indicate who they do or do not accept applications from. However, only Duke University, CSS code 5156, accepts applications from an undergraduate applicant. Look for that when there are multiple schools or programs that appear in your search results. Also note that the box you check to select your college is underneath your college and not above it. Take your time and pick the right college to get your CSS profile. Once you select your colleges, you'll be asked to report your status at each college. For most high school seniors, you will select first year undergraduate, never previously attended as your year in school. For high school seniors who are dually enrolled and earning college credits, a common mistake is to select first year, previously enrolled, or even second year. But neither of those would be correct responses. Students taking college classes as high school students are generally not eligible for financial aid and are technically still considered high school students. These students would select first-year undergraduate, never previously attended, as their 2022-23 year in school. Even if you are bringing college credit with you, if you earn those credits as a high school senior and you are applying to college as a high school student, you should select first-year undergraduate, never previously attended. Elizabeth completed the academic section and selected the colleges to receive her CSS profile. Now she provides her year in school, her housing plans, and her admission application status individually for each of her colleges. Elizabeth left the student ID number blank, but if any of her colleges had assigned her an ID, it would be important for her to enter it here. Notice that Elizabeth can report that she is applying for early decision at one of her colleges, but is applying for regular decision at the other. Each college will only receive the information provided for it. They will not receive information about other colleges Elizabeth is applying to. Until now, the questions have all been about Elizabeth, but as we move into the income and asset sections of the CSS profile, we start by asking the parents' information first. Before completing the Parent Tax Schedules and Forms section, it will be very important for you and your parents to verify if schedules apply to your 1040. Common items such as state income tax and business income are reported on schedules versus the 1040 itself. If your parents used a tax preparer or tax preparation software, they need to carefully check their tax documents for schedules. The reason for this is when using a tax software, it often does not tell you the questions are reported on a schedule. The only way to know is to review your tax documents. If they do apply, be sure to select the schedules here. If you do not all tax questions will be asked. Ava is asked to provide income from the tax return she and Mark filed for 2020. Since she reported that she and Mark had filed an IRS 1040, she sees questions that ask her to provide information directly from that form. Notice that the questions here start with line. That means we are asking for information from a specific line on the tax return. If your parents filed any tax forms or schedules, the questions display the line numbers from those forms. The tax return line numbers are displayed to make it easy to report the correct information. In most cases, if the line is blank on the tax return, it can be left blank in the application. If a question is required, indicated by a red asterisk, you should enter 0 instead of leaving it blank. Here, Elizabeth reports the information from lines 1, 2A, 3B, 10C, and 11 of her parents' tax return, but left the remaining lines blank as they do not apply.
To answer the questions about parent earnings, Ava used the W-2s her husband received from work. She also used the information in box 12 of the W-2s and the monthly wage statements to answer questions about retirement contributions and their flexible spending accounts for medical expenses. Since neither she nor her husband participated in an FSA or an HSA, she answered 0 to both of those questions. Even though many of the figures reported on Mark's W-2s showed cents, Ava was careful to round those cents and report whole numbers only.
In light of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the income for many families, we have added a new question to the Parent 2021 Income and Benefits section. Your parents will be asked if their 2021 income was significantly impacted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If you select yes, you need to provide additional details in the Special Circumstances section to explain how it was affected. Once we get to the Special Circumstances section, we will cover how to enter those details for your school. One section within the application that we know parents struggle with is the parent's other year's income and benefits. It's difficult to estimate their future income, and they worry that this will somehow work against them. These questions are important to show if your family expects financial stability or not. Most parents report income values that don't change too much from year to year. Your parents will be asked if they expect a significant income change in 2022 due to a new job, job loss, etc. Your parents will only need to enter expected year income for 2022 if they expect a significant change. Let's see what happens if Elizabeth's parents report that they do expect a significant income change in 2022. If Elizabeth's parents answer yes to the expect change question, they will be presented with these additional questions. Mark and Ava will need to estimate how much each parent is expected to make in 2022. If they answer no, they will skip these questions entirely and go directly to the next section. We won't go through the asset pages, but other than everyone reporting the value of their cash, saving, and checking accounts, you'll only be asked questions about assets you own. Elizabeth's parents report information about their investments, the family home, and about Ava's business. One quick note: if you own more than one business, farm, or real estate other than your primary home, the application will include questions about each individual asset. It's important for Elizabeth and her parents to report everyone in their household. This helps the aid officer more fully understand her family. CSS Profile helps by telling them who they have reported so far. We see that the family contains Elizabeth, Mark, and Ava. Next, they can report any other family members. Elizabeth's younger brother John is reported as Elizabeth's sibling. Since John is Elizabeth's only sibling, her parents just click Save and Continue. However, if Mark and Ava had additional family members, they would click on the Add Another Dependent button to add another person to the household. They would do this for all of their children and for every person who lived in the home whom Mark and Ava provided more of half of their support. Next, Mark and Ava will report either John's year in school or indicate he will not be enrolled in school for the academic years requested. This will be done for each of the family members reported. We label these questions with each family member's name so it's easy to see who the question is about. Once Mark and Ava have provided their income and asset information and reported their family members, it will be Elizabeth's turn to report her own income and assets. She'll see fewer questions because she doesn't have much in the way of income or assets. The Special Circumstances section is a favorite of many financial aid officers. This question can help the aid officer understand you and your family, especially when there are issues that can impact the decisions you make about your college career. Use this section to share your story by selecting all options that apply to you. Be sure to be as specific as possible by including specific dollar amounts and providing examples. For example, your parents were asked if their 2021 income was significantly impacted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If you selected yes to that question, you need to select the COVID-19 pandemic box on this page and use the freeform text box to explain the financial difficulties. Be sure to be specific here. The financial aid officer will need to know actual amounts affected to understand the full impact. The aid officer is there to help you, and if you have something you need to share, you should share it. Now that Elizabeth has submitted her CSS profile, she visits her dashboard. The application status section gives her up-to-date information on her application and provides her payment receipt. The colleges and program section shows the full list of her colleges. She can check important dates and link to her school's student portal if the school provided this information. Additionally, she can add another college by clicking on Add a College or Program. Finally, she sees her next steps, which tell her she needs to complete her financial aid application, such as submitting documents through IDOC, the College Board's institutional documentation service, or by sending them directly to her colleges. Made a mistake on your application? You can now submit a correction for the 22-23 award year. There are 3 basics you need to keep in mind about CSS Profile corrections. You can only submit one correction for your CSS profile. You cannot change or remove data from your original application. The primary goal of the CSS profile correction is to add data to your application. The correction process will be available after your original application has been delivered to your school. This is typically 1 business day after delivery. Lastly, there will be no cost to submit the correction to your colleges. So let's take a quick look at how you submit a correction. Once the correction process is available, a new Correct Your CSS Profile button will appear on your dashboard. You will click this button to start the process. You will then be brought to the correction process. Here, you will first need to select the primary reason for the correction. You cannot select more than one reason, so it is important to select the main reason for the correction. There are a number of possible reasons to choose from when making a correction. Changing from independent to dependent and need to add a business or farm will require you to answer additional questions. The remaining options will only allow you to provide information in a free-form text box. This is the reason it is important to select the right option here to ensure additional questions are asked if needed. For example, if you need to add a business and you had a change in employment, you will want to select Need to add a business or farm. This way, the additional business and farm questions will appear. You can add additional information into the free-form text box to account for the change in employment. We are going to look at each correction type a little further to provide you with some key tips about each process. For the option changing from independent to dependent, it is very important that you talk to your colleges first. They will be able to advise if this correction is really needed or not. In most cases, this is needed when a parent enters their information as the student in the Getting Started and Student Status sections. When this happens, the parent income, expenses, and asset questions are not always displayed. This correction type was set up in order to update the parent information to the students and collect these missing parent questions. Once you talk with your college, your next step is to contact customer service. They are the only ones who can open this type of correction. If you do not speak with them first, a warning message will appear when selecting this option. Customer service will work with you to open this flow. Once done, you can return to the correction process from your CSS Profile dashboard, select Changing from Independent to Dependent, complete the free-form text box, and then answer all of the parent questions. From there, you will enter the correction application. The navigation bar on the left will open the parent sections not previously completed, such as the parent details, child support, parent assets, and so on. As a reminder, you will not be able to click on or update the student information previously submitted on your original application. Once all of the questions have been answered, you submit the application similar to the steps for submitting the first application. If you need to add a business or farm to your application, you will start the correction process by clicking on Correct Your CSS Profile on your dashboard, select that option, complete the freeform text box, and click Continue. The Asset sections for both parents and students will then open. To add a business or farm, you will need to click Add Item for each business or farm you need to add. For example, Mark clicks the button twice to enter 2 businesses he owns and enters the name of each business. Once done, he clicks Save and Continue to answer questions individually about each business. This will be the same method you will use to enter parent farms as well as any student businesses or farms. As a reminder, you will not have the option to change or update businesses or farms that were submitted on the original application. You can only add new businesses or farms here. Once all questions have been answered, you will submit the correction. For all other types of corrections, you will simply select the main reason for the correction, complete the freeform text box, and submit the correction. Once submitted, the profile dashboard will update with the correction submitted date and allow you to save a copy of the updated application. The Add a College or Program button will be added back to the dashboard. The Next Steps section will also update if you need to submit additional documents to your school.
We've talked about most of these, but let's learn from the mistakes that we see the most. Make certain you are applying for the correct academic year. Most students who are high school seniors in 2020-21 will enroll in college in 2021-22. That is your financial aid application year. Entering important information incorrectly. Make certain you report the student's name and social security number correctly. Both of these are really important. And be careful about reporting parent information in a student section and vice versa. If the parent duplicates their income by reporting it in both the parent's and the student's income section, it can make the family look financially stronger than is the case. Entering the student's date of birth incorrectly. It is so easy to enter this information wrong. Check, and double check. Answering questions about the student's status incorrectly. Too often, parents report that they have legal dependents or that they are veterans, when the questions are really asking if the student has legal dependents or is a veteran. Make certain you take the time to read and understand who the question is about. Selecting a graduate school instead of the college's undergraduate program. Selecting the wrong college means your CSS profile information is delivered to the wrong school and could mean that your application is significantly delayed or worse. Always check carefully and make certain you are sending your CSS profile to a college that accepts the CSS profile from undergraduate applicants.
New this year, we are providing supports for Spanish-speaking families, including a CSS Profile application guide, customer service hours, and a resource page that will be available in Spanish at cssprofile.org.
We have resources for you at cssprofile.org. For other tutorials, check out the Getting Started page to find completing the CSS profile as the non-custodial parent and reporting parents on the CSS profile. You can also find contact information for customer service with phone, email, and chat options. Thank you for listening to this presentation. We hope it has been helpful.